Tommy Dewey, now starring on Casual on Hulu. It's just aired its final episode of this first season. What the first time you read the pilot script, what attracted you most about Alex?
Well, it really was the language. It was funny and moving in equal measure, and I think I share a humor with Alex. He deflects things with sarcasm, with glibness sometimes, which I'm probably guilty of. But there was a flow to it that identified Xander Lehman, the creator of the show, as just a great listener, a guy that really has his ear to the ground in terms of how how language ebbs and flows. It was really easy to learn, which is usually an indication that the writing is solid. And that was the first thing. And then the team behind it. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Jason Reitman's movies. And so I knew kind of tonally what he'd be bringing to it visually and in his direction, and it all kind of synced up.
What was the process for you to get the role?
It was pretty involved. I went and read. I had met some of the I met Jason socially and knew John Papsadera, the casting director. But I came in and met with and read for Jason, his producing partner, Helen Estabrook, and a couple other folks, and then didn't hear anything for 2-3 weeks. They were seeing a handful of people, and then they had me come back and do a couple of screen tests. One with Michaela, she by that point had the job, and another with Tara, who plays my niece on the show. I think I came back one more time, and Michaela and I maybe laid down a couple more scenes. So by the end of the process, I had committed, 6 or 7 scenes to tape, and Jason had been there, directing them as he would were we shooting it for real. But I could tell I kind of knew I had the voice right. It was a matter of could they get their casting choices through the system. Michaela and I were in sync pretty early on, and I just thought it was a matter if we could get all parties to sign off that I had a shot at it. And so I was delighted to get that call, to say the least.
Well, one thing I interviewed her earlier in the week, and one thing we talked about was, brother-sister relationships on these kinds of shows. I mean, we're just seeing you for the first time together on the first episode, but you've known each other. The characters have known each other, obviously, their whole lives. So in your opinion, how do you make that so lived in and real?
I think it's a great question, and I think it's hard to pull off. I mean, I think it starts with the casting. I think you find people that seem to sync up on the I think humor is really important. I don't just mean that in terms of like we're making a comedy here. I mean, just your sensibility, your kind of point of view on the world. And Michaela and I became fast friends. Unsurprisingly, because we have a lot in common in that respect, and then I think you have to be sort of fearless in opening up, not to sound too cheesy or precious about it, but kind of opening up your soul to this other actress on the first day, So I remember us just getting really personal with each other really quickly, because we knew, looking at the scripts, how personal these siblings were going to get with one another, that we had to have a willingness to be open. So the good news in something like this is it's a small show in terms of cast. So Michaela and I are there pretty much every day. So it's not like the thing, I shoot Monday and then I have a couple more scenes on Thursday. It didn't take too long for us, because we were spending 12 hours a day together from the get-go. So by that second week, we were cooking with gas.
Well, that's a good point too, on a first-year show especially. How do you feel looking back now that, once you completed that last episode of the first season, do you feel like you were a different performer, a different character at that point, because you'd done it, now for 10 weeks instead of just 1?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I think you relax into it. I mean, I think the only way to do that is putting some hours in the saddle, so to speak. But it happened really quickly, because we've got great writers. It's great material to work on, and great cast and crew. But by the end of it, I think one thing that happens is you stop overthinking things. You gain a confidence in yourself and your other performers that if you just show up and you know the lines, you just know them cold, that that something will happen in the ether, between the two of you or the three of you in performance, and to trust that. Whereas you go in early on, you don't know cast, you don't know crew, you're unsure of things, and I'm speaking of other jobs. You kind of overthink, overplan, and stuff like that. So by the end, it was just a pleasure to, spend an hour with it at night, get the lines, and then show up that next day with a sense of play, knowing that, you could kind of trust these guys to catch you.
Now that you've worked with her quite a bit, what makes Michaela special? Why was she perfect for this role?
She has acting gets a lot easier when the person across from you is believable, and she has a presentness about her that is second to none. She owns that character through and through, in a way that I don't see too many actresses do. And so just looking across the table, across the hallway, or wherever, setting a scene and responding to that. It makes my job a whole lot easier and a whole lot more fulfilling, and hopefully I provide that to her, because that's the magic of it. The greater the percentage of those moments, I think the better off your show is.
And you mentioned Jason Reitman. I just love his films, and this is, I guess, maybe this is his first shot in television, maybe.
Yeah.
What makes him good? I mean, why is he so respected in the industry and such a good storyteller?
Well, one thing is, I think, well, first of all, he's a writer, so he does really have a sense of story. He's not just a shooter, that said, he has a sense of style. It's the style and substance, and I've said this before, is that the shots are beautiful, but they don't detract from what's going on emotionally in the scene. Those two things are perfectly synced up in a way that I can't even articulate, because it's some of what he does with the camera and how he coordinates a shot is beyond what I do. But I think his ability to talk to actors, but also to talk to a crew and really craft a shot and then a scene and then an episode of television is kind of unmatched. And I think and then I got to credit Xander Lehman again. I think those two were kind of two peas in a pod, and I'm glad they found each other. I think Xander's writing style complements Jason's directing, and vice versa. So it was kind of cool to see them start to soar with their collaboration.
I met your creator a couple of weeks ago at that Hulu party for the holidays.
Oh, yeah.
And what was funny was I could hear some of your voice and some of Michaela's voice, the character's voices coming just out of him, just casually talking.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to overstate this, but we really, everyone got along swimmingly from day one. It's such a rare experience that that happens. And Xander and I spent a ton of time together, got to know each other so well, and I see him all the time now. We really synced up, and again, have a similar sensibility, kind of shared way of looking at the world, and so it came together nicely.
As you got scripts from week to week and working on the next episode, what was a moment along the way where you read a script and you went, "Wow, I didn't see that coming," or "I didn't know I would be doing this as Alex over the course of this season"?
Well, there were several. I will say the one script that kind of hit us all like ice water in the face was that 9th episode where Valerie crosses a line. I guess I don't have to worry about spoilers on this, but Valerie ends up with my girlfriend, and it really throws us into a tailspin. And we've talked about how that's a moment where Alex and Valerie kind of cross paths. Or sort of switch roles. He's been the generator of chaos for the most part up to that point, and then she's the one in that 9th episode that throws a real wrench into everything. And then I thought, oh my God, how are we going to get out of that? And then seeing how they wrapped it up beautifully. Also, as you know, there's a lot of intimacy in this show, and you sign on for a half-hour comedy, or as it's described in the trades, and it takes a really honest look at sex and relationships. So you think, okay, I guess we're hopping in the sack again this week, and it's something you never completely get used to, and again, it requires a trust among the cast and the crew and the director that you're going to create something beautiful and something that's necessary to the story, and so forth and so on.
One of my favorites for you this season, not in the relationship area, well, I guess it's sort of a relationship area, was the dog episode. I don't think anybody on screen or anybody sitting at home was thinking that was a good idea. For you, for Alex.
No. Well, yeah, terrible idea. But my goodness, I almost took one of those dogs home. They bring several Carls just because some of them start misbehaving, so they have to swap one in for another. But yeah, I think he's a jumps before he thinks kind of guy, and that impulsiveness is really fun to play. And to credit the writing again, I love that Carl comes back into play, at least in spirit, in that last episode, as well. I like that episode particularly because we start that episode, you really start to see Alex crack. I mean, if you only got a couple episodes in, you've seen him deflect stuff with sarcasm and glibness, like I said. And it'd be easy to mistake that for all that he is, but what we were doing was was purposeful, which was let's show a guy that's kind of hard to like, but peel away the layers as slowly as we can while keeping people on board, and then reveal what makes him tick. And I think 4 is when the first little cracks start to form. You see him drop the dog off, and he knows he's not the guy for this dog, but he he kind of can't stand it. There's a little emotion creeps out in that scene, and from there up to the finale, that it's like that. It's like a crack in a windshield that sort of starts to spread. It's a little something more every week, and then there's the climax in the 10th episode where it all shatters or comes very close to it.
Well, that's what I love most about television, especially a series that lasts a while, several seasons, is you do get to explore a character over a long stretch of time, and they can change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that for a long time, and this is not necessarily a bad thing, but there was this notion that comedies should be kind of wrapped up nicely at the end of every episode, and the characters stay kind of static. But really, in the current era, with the Hulus of the world doing the streaming stuff, where even if it's released weekly, it's ultimately bingeable. You can watch that thing like a 4.5, 5-hour movie, and it holds up as such. And that, having done a lot in the half-hour comedy space and done a lot of pilots in that space, to be able to do it and look at the long game and play the long game for an actor is really rewarding. So I think talent is really drawn to these kinds of shows, and someone like Jason is the right guy to do them, I think.
Well, speaking of that 10th episode you mentioned, I know you can't give away any spoilers, even if you know them, but do you have, I mean, it really left things interesting to set up for a second season. Do you have any feelings as to where it might lead?
I think, and I, to hear Xander tell it, and I actually don't want to know too much. I like it to be as fresh as it can be, but yet still give me a little time to prepare. So I won't start looking at scripts until January, probably late January. But I know that they want to get the characters out into the world a little bit more. I think the sense was we needed to see them in that world together. That house is kind of the magnet that pulls them all back together. But I think there will be some attempts for them to go out and sort of legitimize themselves in the world at large. But I would be surprised if they didn't end up back together, drawn back to that magnet. Because I do know that everyone on the creative side recognizes that the strength of this show is in the heart of it is in the core of these three oddballs that can't seem to get away from one another, for better or worse.
And what's, while you're shooting a show, especially a first season of a show, you don't really know, what's the reaction going to be? What are people going to say? Now that people have seen all of these, or maybe they're getting started on them or whatever, as you talk to friends, people on the street, whoever, what's been the reaction to you?
Well, the most satisfying reaction, and I spoke to this a second ago, is that that people have stuck with it and recognized, at least with my character, what we were doing. Oh my God, I thought Alex was like this because of this, but it turns out, he's got all these demons and all this pain, and to hear people engage with that or say I do that. That's how I cover, stuff is particularly rewarding. And then the show as a whole, it's interesting because I think people recognize it's one of these shows that's serialized and can play as a longer piece. You feel, one exciting thing is you feel that snowball kind of building. It's not like a sort of network episodic. You have a sense of whether you're going to have an audience or not in those first 2-3 weeks. This feels like every week you hear a little bit more from Twitter, or a little bit more response comes across the transom. So it feels like it's growing and people are recommending it to friends, and that's really satisfying and cool.
Well, good luck with everything. I know, I feel like you're going to be on some of these, year-end best of lists that we see from the critics and the magazines and such. And we're hoping that we get to see you on some of these red carpets at the award shows that are on the way.
Well, it sure would be nice, but first and foremost, I'm proud of what we've done. I love having a job, and especially this one. It's a good group of people.